It's called The Beautiful Game. And for the first time since the mid-1980s, Canada is playing in its preeminent contest, the World Cup. Simon Cooper is a columnist with the Financial Times who's written extensively on soccer. He is co-author with Stefan Szymanski of the newly reissued World Cup edition of Soccernomics: Why European Men and American Women Win and Billionaire Owners Are Destined to Lose. And Simon Cooper joins us now from Paris, France, home of Allez les Bleus. Bonsoir, monsieur. Comment allez-vous?
Très bien, merci.
Excellent. I think we're going to switch to English now, though, Simon, if that's okay with you. Let's do a quote from the book here to get started. Soccer, you write, is not merely a small business. It has also historically been a bad one. Until very recently, and to some degree still today, anyone who spent any time inside soccer soon discovered that just as oil was part of the oil business, stupidity was part of the soccer business. Okay, let's dive into that. How did you come to the conclusion that soccer is a small and bad business?
Well, the small business is just an empirical fact. I mean, the biggest clubs, Real Madrid, Barcelona, Manchester United, have revenues of about $1 billion a year, which would never get them anywhere near the S&P 500. Usually clubs just make losses. Manchester United is a very rare example of a profitable club. So these are mid-sized businesses. They're often very badly run by heirs, as vanity projects, by billionaires and oligarchs. And for almost all of its history, soccer clubs have lost money. And people come in thinking they're going to run it like a business and exit a few years later having failed either to make money or win trophies. So hence small, bad business, we say in the book.
Although the glamour surely has to count for something, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, people want to be involved with soccer because it's very glamorous. It gets you attention from people. A lot of people who made money in regular business, what do they want in life? They don't really want so much more money. They want to be loved and respected. So you're a Roman Abramovich, you have $50 billion, you buy Chelsea. You know, it's fun. It's a good way to spend the rest of your life.
Oh, you do write, despite being a bad business, soccer clubs are safer than the Bank of England. How can that be?
Because when they go bankrupt, which sometimes happens, they still survive. You can't get more sustainable than that. I mean, periodically, you know, the bank or somebody will pull the plug on the club. And it's very easy to create the club again, because what is a club really? It's just a name, it's some shirts, it's maybe the stadium. And so you create a new holding company and hey presto, a few days later, you're playing with the same shirts in the same stadium in front of the same fans. And this has happened dozens of times in the history of English football, for example.
Let's make the distinction here between the club game and the international game. And the conventional wisdom always was that the international game was that was the really big deal. There's been a lot of talk, I guess, lately that the club game has caught up and even surpassed the international game. What say you?
Club soccer is definitely better at the top end than international soccer. So the best teams in the world, you know, Liverpool, Real Madrid, Bayern Munich, and so on, they are better than almost any team, maybe better than any team that we'll see at this World Cup. I think if Real Madrid were entering as a team, they would be the runaway favorites. In a national team, you can't buy players for the positions you don't have covered. And above all, these teams, the national teams, they play together very rarely, especially with this World Cup. There's only a week of preparation time. So automatisms that the best clubs do. Club soccer at the top is better.
Does this, in your view, diminish the aura or significance of the World Cup at all?
It does to me a bit. I mean, I've been to every World Cup since 1990, and in the first round, you often find yourself watching very boring, low-level games that sort of between two teams that would not survive in the English Premier League. You know, I remember one of my low points in World Cups, 2010, watching Japan, Paraguay 0-0, and thinking, why am I here? Why is anyone here? This is just terrible. And so, you know, with 32 teams, maybe half of these teams are deeply mediocre. And there's bad soccer, but still it means a lot to people back home. So, you know, if Japan play Paraguay, it means a lot in those two countries, even though this is very far from being the best soccer in the world.
I'd like your view on how far you think Major League Soccer in North America has come. I know here in Toronto, for example, we've got a team, Toronto FC, that routinely gets really good crowds, twice as big, in fact, as the Canadian Football League team that has a 100-year head start on it. How good do you think the quality of soccer is in MLS?
So the best soccer players can go to any league in the world. And on the whole, they congregate in the leagues where the salaries are higher. So think Premier League or the best teams in Spain or Germany. And we reckon that MLS salaries are slightly below salaries in the Swiss league or the Belgian league. So you're not going to be able to get the best players with the salaries you're paying, and that's partly because TV rights for the MLS are very low compared to the best European leagues. So you're about, I would guess, the 12th best league in the world or so. And you see that the best US players, the best Canadians, they go to the top European leagues. Think of Jonathan David, think of Alphonso Davies. And so I'm happy that there are big crowds, and I'm sure MLS has improved over time, but this is not, possibly not even a second tier league. It is maybe a third tier league.
When an MLS championship takes place, does anybody in Europe notice?
No.
Okay. I was interested in your references in the book to the Moneyball approach to soccer, and I wonder if you feel it lends itself as a game to the same kind of statistical analysis as clearly has taken over baseball and even hockey to some extent.
There is a lot of statistical analysis going on these last 10 years in particular. And some clubs, I would single out Brentford and Brighton in England, and then Midtjylland in Denmark have done well in identifying undervalued players in, how to take a free kick, how to take a corner kick to the best statistical advantage. But it's still pretty marginal compared to baseball. I mean, statistical analysis really revolutionized baseball. You ended up with different players playing different strategies. In soccer, it's so far only made a marginal difference. It's really been very disappointing. And one of the problems is that for 88, 89 minutes a game, a player doesn't have the ball. And it's very important to know, what is he doing in the 89 minutes he doesn't have the ball? Well, it's very hard for statistical analysis to understand that so far.
Well, let me do a follow-up on the analytics question, because I was really interested in your references to the ownership of the Boston Red Sox of Major League Baseball. This is John Henry, who bought himself a team 12 years ago, bought Liverpool, wanted to bring the same kind of analytics approach that he brought to the Red Sox and won 4 titles there to Liverpool. How much success has he had importing that kind of approach to his soccer empire?
They recruited people with PhDs from top universities in subjects like astrophysics to do player analysis, and they claim that that helped them identify the somewhat undervalued Egyptian striker Mo Salah, bring him to Liverpool, help them identify Jurgen Klopp as Liverpool coach. We're skeptical. I mean, in Soccernomics, we do this analysis of how well do clubs relative to their spending on salaries and transfers. And Liverpool does moderately well, but actually the standout team in England for outperforming their spending is Tottenham. So I'd be very curious to know what Tottenham are doing, because they're suddenly doing something, it seems, more advanced than Liverpool. So I'm skeptical that analytics has been as good for Liverpool as it has been for the Boston Red Sox.
Understood. Well, it clearly hasn't. The Red Sox have got 4 World Series titles this century, and how many has Liverpool got?
Well, at least they won the Champions League. I don't think the Red Sox have won the Champions League.
No, that's a fair point. Okay. I want to ask you about women's soccer because, in particular in Canada, the most famous player, I think, in the history of soccer in this country is a woman, Christine Sinclair. And I was interested to read in your book that women's soccer was banned for decades, even here in Canada. What's the story there?
I mean, it's amazing to reflect on now, but around 1920, after World War I, during and after World War I, women's teams became very popular in England. And there was one in particular, the Dick Kerr Ladies, started out as a factory team. And by the end of World War I, they're drawing crowds of 50,000. And they're playing excellent football. They're hugely respected. And when the men come back from war, the English Football Association says, this women's soccer is a threat. We're going to ban it. And so they forbid any club that's attached to the Football Association, which means all clubs in England, from letting women play on their fields. So from about 1921, for 50 years, women's teams in England, Canada, and many other leagues, the ban approximately 50 years in most of these countries, cannot play on regular sports fields. And so they can only, play in parks, using sweaters for goalposts. And so what we argue in Soccernomics is that men's soccer owes women's soccer reparations, because why is women's soccer now behind men's soccer? It's because of this 50-year ban. It's because they were denied the opportunity to play, the resources, the ability to build women's teams with well-known names that would have, histories of support like you get in men's soccer. And so it's really scandalous what men's soccer did, and it's time to pay reparations.
Reparations in what form? How would that work?
Well, I mean, our cautious estimate would be that it would be many tens of billions due, given the restraints of trade, illegally discriminatory, that was in place for 50 years. But what you'd want is very large sums of money transferred from men's soccer, which obviously generates huge amounts of money in television revenues, in ticket sales, sponsorship, and use that money to create facilities and training and places where girls can play, where women can play, so that women's soccer can quickly get back to where it should have been, which is parity with men's soccer in terms of interest, attention, skill levels, and number of players.
How much embracing of that idea have you found in your travels?
Well, Soccernomics is just out with this argument, so I'm sure that when people read it, they will be totally convinced, and all these reparations will come streaming in. It's really, most importantly, a way for people to think about the damage that was done and how we need to start redressing it right now.
Right. Okay, the first edition of this book, Soccernomics, came out 13 years ago. And, if we use baseball as an example, there have been a lot of changes in baseball over the last 13 years, very few of them good. And I wonder if we could do the same kind of comparison for soccer. What are the biggest changes over the 13 years, and have they improved or not improved the game?
I would say that soccer is like baseball in a way. It's quite a traditional sport, and so it's quite stable. So you always have pretty much the same teams playing in the same cities, which you don't get in American Major League sports. The rules barely change. There has been, I think 13 years ago, people thought that the North American leagues, the Japanese league, the Chinese league would come up and start buying really good players and challenge Western Europeans. That hasn't happened. The Western Europeans have become, if possible, even more dominant in terms of they have the best leagues, but they also have the best national teams. They just found the best way to play soccer, and all other continents trail that. So I think the trend the last 13 years is Western European soccer dominance has become extreme. And otherwise, the game has remained, very, very similar to what it was. There was an attempt at revolution last year by the owners creating a super league, the owners of the 12 biggest clubs. And due to fan outrage, that failed. So there's a kind of, I think, very healthy conservatism in soccer that stops radical change. And there's an issue of, if it ain't broke, why fix it? This is the most popular sport in the world.
Well, it is interesting that in the nearly 100 years that the World Cup's been around, I think only 8 countries have won in a game that is played in dozens and hundreds of countries around the world. Why do you think that is?
I think it's because the Western Europeans, and less so recently the South Americans, the Southern South Americans, have found out how to train kids and how to play the best soccer. So here in Western Europe, I see it in my children in Paris. From the age of 6, you're learning how to make passing triangles. You're learning how to close down space when the other team has the ball. You're learning how to think soccer. Soccer is geometry, and it's very important to understand that. And then Brazil and Argentina are the only countries in the world that rival now, sort of the last 70 years, the Western Europeans. They produce the best players, the best individuals, the best dribblers. Think of Leo Messi, think of Neymar, who are better than any European player. And so all the rest of the world has begun to play, but not begun to play well.
You have a chapter in the book called Why Hosting the World Cup is Good for You. And given that this country is going to be hosting it in 4 years' time, I think our viewers and listeners would be interested to know why you think this will be good for us.
Well, it'd be good for you. And partly, I think you already have all the facilities you need. You're not going to be doing a lot of building of stadiums that become pointless white elephants 2 days after the tournament, which is what South Africa did, what Brazil did. So you have the facilities, and what this World Cup does is it brings the country together. It gives everyone in Canada during those weeks something to talk about, something to share with others. And that kind of communal conversation we kind of lost sort of with the decline of national television. When I was a kid, everyone would watch the same program the night before, and you could talk about it at school, the office the next day. We don't have that anymore. And with the World Cup, you get that back again. So you have a shared national conversation which draws lonely people into society, which is very important for the loneliest among us. And so we show in Soccernomics that in European countries, when the country is playing in a World Cup, suicides in that country decline. When a country is hosting a World Cup, self-reports of national happiness rises. So these are very important events for communal happiness. And I think you Canadians will discover this yourselves in 2026.
Okay, having said that, the World Cup, is in Qatar this year. And, there's been a ton of controversy surrounding this about the ethics that have been pursued in Qatar in getting the games. You wrote a piece for the Financial Times, your newspaper, called "The Ethical Case for Watching This Possibly Unethical World Cup." What's the case you're making?
I'm saying that World Cups bring enormous happiness to millions, hundreds of millions of people around the world, including people who have very difficult lives. And so it's a shared, not just a national journey, but it's a shared international moment where, whether you live in Kiev or Moscow, or you live in Winnipeg or in Ouagadougou, you have something in common. So it unites the globe, it brings great happiness. And specifically vis-a-vis Qatar, treads on the human rights of migrants, of women, of LGBTQ people. And we should be talking about that every single day. Sports washing works if we stop talking about the abuses. And because the World Cup is in Qatar, there's been an immense attention on the bad things that happen there. And that has embarrassed Qatar, which needs Western friends. Qatar fears its neighbors, Saudi Arabia, Iran. It wants us as friends. It cares what we think about it. And so in response to international pressure, which only happened because this tiny country got the World Cup, Qatar has been forced to improve its legislation for migrants, not nearly enough, and it's not mostly enforced yet. But this engagement has achieved something. Amnesty International will tell you that. The International Trade Union Congress will tell you that. So just by watching with a conscience and watching and talking about the abuses in Qatar, but also enjoying the soccer, I think we do most to improve the loss of migrants and also, make humanity a little bit happier in years that have not been easy for many people.
Understood. Okay, in our remaining moments here, let's get you on the record with your World Cup predictions. This is Canada's first trip to the World Cup in 36 years. How far do you think this country can go?
Firstly, my predictions are always wrong. Now, you're in a group with Morocco, not a historically strong country, and with Croatia and Belgium, which have been very strong in recent years. But, the Belgians, their great generation, they had about 10 or 12 wonderful players, sort of almost by chance, all grew up together. But now those guys are waning. The last two still in their peak are Thibaut Courtois and Kevin De Bruyne. The rest are old. So you're playing against an old Belgium, not the Belgium of 4 years ago. Croatia, similarly, their star player, Luka Modric, still wonderful, 37 years old. The Croatian generation that reached the last World Cup final, also largely on the way out. So in that sense, you haven't been totally unlucky with who you're playing against. It's the right moment, I think, to play Croatia, Belgium. It will still be a stretch for Canada to reach the second round, but I wouldn't be amazed if you do that.
Well, I've heard some people are so despondent about things right now, they're wondering if we're even going to score a goal, let alone win a game. You think we're going to score a goal?
My bet is that you will score a goal, yes. Don't hold me to that.
Okay, good enough. We note that England just won the Cricket World Cup. Can they win the Soccer World Cup?
It's possible. I mean, I would put the chances at, say, 1 in 15, 1 in 10. That's not bad. England have a strong side. They've been poor in recent months, but yeah, they absolutely could do it.
Messi or Ronaldo? Who has the better World Cup?
Messi. I mean, Messi is 2 years younger. Ronaldo is a little bit clapped out at this point, and Messi always was the better player. I mean, Ronaldo is a brilliant player, and Messi is better.
Okay, I guess I should leave the ultimate question to last. Who wins?
In my dreams, the Netherlands. I grew up in Holland. In real life, I wouldn't discount France, where I live now. Everyone's tipping Brazil, Argentina, so I'm going to tip France.
France it is. Okay. And I guess I know you're scrupulously neutral when you cover soccer, but you never did actually tell us who your favorite team is in your home and native land. Whom do you love?
I grew up in the Netherlands really supporting all Dutch teams when they played in Europe, but especially supporting the national team. So the team that does it for me most of all is the Dutch national team, who thankfully will be back in this World Cup after a 4-year absence. So Hup Holland Hup. I'm very much supporting Holland.
Well, good luck to them, if only to make you happy, and not to mention a few million people in the Netherlands as well. Simon, it's awfully good of you to spend some time with us on TVO tonight. We remind people your book is called Soccernomics: Why European Men and American Women Win and Billionaire Owners Are Destined to Lose. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.